हॅलो डिअर स्टुडंट, वेलकम टू मराठा विद्याप्रसारक समाजाच SSM आर्ट कॉमर्स अँड सायन्स कॉलेज सायखेडा. Myself Patil JS from Department of Chemistry. Today we are focused on purity of the precipitate. The purity of the precipitate is very important in deciding the impurity present in that particular compound. So the types of precipitate impurity are present are co-precipitation and post-precipitation. These are the two types of impurity that is obtained during precipitate formation. Let us see in detail co-precipitation. Co-precipitation is occur when we are preparing our compound and that compound have some amount of impurity associated with it. The main precipitate may contain varying amount of the impurity during upon the nature of the precipitate and the condition of the precipitate. Means in which condition and which nature the precipitate is generated that have a more impact on the precipitate formation or impurity generation. So, what is the definition of co-precipitation? The contamination of the precipitate by the substances which are normally soluble in the mother liquor is termed as co-precipitation. Mother liquor means what? The solution in which our precipitate is generated. Nowadays, co-precipitation is a serious error in the gravimetry analysis. The impurity generated due to the co-precipitation is not easily removed by the simple washing of the precipitate. There are generally two types of co-precipitation. Co-precipitation arises due to surface adsorption and co-precipitation arises due to occlusion. So, let us discuss in detail the co-precipitation arises due to the surface adsorption. In that, precipitate with the ionic lattice type appear to follow a rule that the ion is most strongly adsorbed by an ionic substance. This forms a least soluble salt. It is observed for gelatinous precipitate and least observed for the macrocrystalline character. For example, calcium ion is adsorbed preferentially over a magnesium ion because calcium sulfate is less soluble than the magnesium sulfate. Here the most important part is what? Nature of the precipitate play an important role while deciding it is adsorbed or not the impurity. The electrolytic dissociation of the adsorbed compound also have a greatest effect. In that, smaller the dissociation of the compound, greater is the adsorption. When the compound is smaller dissociated in the ionic form and it have the greater, if our compound is smaller dissociation, then it having the greater adsorption on it. Next is co-precipitation arises due to the occlusion. This type of co-precipitation observed during the building up of the precipitate from the primary particles. Means this is arise at the start of the precipitate generation. When the impurity diffuse through the substrate lattice, it form a part of lattice. Under this condition, a impurity form a solid solution with the precipitate. The solid solution formation of two components is favored. When it is observed, first is the two salt have the identical crystal lattice. And second one, the radii of the ion with the equal charge do not differ by more than 10%. There is two type of condition. First is identical crystal lattice, means they have the small size, a similar size. Also, they have the size and shape similarly. That type of compound are generally get impurified by the occlusion process of the co-precipitation. For example, barium sulfate and barium chromate are the isomorphous, and radii of the sulfate and bromate ions are comparable. Then how the co-precipitation get minimized? It is minimized with the help of some process. First, the solution used for the precipitation reaction should contain the minimum amount of impurity. Means the chemical used during the precipitate generation, it should be consist of smaller amount of impurity. Directly it is get minimize the co-precipitation. Second is a double precipitation, that is nothing but the recrystallization. Once our precipitate get generated, it is get dissolved in a suitable solvent, and again its crystal get generated. That process you are done in lot of time from FY BSc for the purification of compound. Next is digestion. Operation like digestion or aging, whenever possible, should be carried out after precipitation of the compound. Means it is not carried out during the precipitate formation. Aging process is used for precipitate like barium sulfate and AgCl. This is the best example for it. Next is the organic solvent. Organic solvents sometimes reduce the co-precipitation of the impurity. And the next, if we are adding some reagent in our precipitate generation, it should be added slowly, and we have to maintain the proper temperature during that particular compound generation. It is automatically reduce the co-precipitation. This is all the condition which can useful for minimization of the co-precipitation. Next type of the precipitation is post-precipitation. Post-precipitation, the process in which precipitation of some component or impurity occur on the surface of the precipitate after its formation is called as post-precipitation. Means post-precipitation is occur after the generation of the precipitation. Contamination of the impurity increases with the time when the precipitate is in contact with the mother liquor. How many times our precipitate is in contact with mother liquor, it play an important role in deciding the amount of the post-precipitation. They have an ion in common with the primary precipitate. The longer the precipitate is allowed to stand in contact with the solution, more is the error due to this process. Means what? When our precipitate get generated in our mother liquor, it should be immediately removed from our mother liquor. If it is in contact with the mother liquor, it may cause the post-precipitation with our original compound. Example of the post-precipitation is what? Nickel sulfide precipitate get impurity with the other metal like copper, mercury, zinc. When after precipitation is get in contact with the H2S gas. This is the well-known fact is studied in the inorganic qualitative analysis process. During that process, when we are separate nickel from the mixture, if it is in contact with the H2S, it gives the some amount of copper, mercury and zinc as an impurity in our compound. So, how the post-precipitation can minimize? The most important is that first one is the complex formation. Means what? Our compound which is present, the impurity should be converted in such a form that it cannot take part in the precipitation. This process is generally called as the complex formation, or by changing the oxidation state of our metal ion. Next is filtration of the precipitate should be done rapidly so that there is no chance for the post-precipitation. And the next is the digestion. Generally, the concentration of the impurity should be kept low from the beginning. Digestion process is carried out very slowly. And the last one, digestion means what? Aging process, stirring. Stirring should be carried out during the process. After the process, it should be less in order to minimize the post-precipitation. So, student, do you have any question regarding to this topic? You can ask in the discussion session by the Google Meet. Thank you.